arrested a suspect in the Brooklyn subway shooting, which took place yesterday morning. Now, 62-year-old Frank James is in custody and apparently has described himself in the past as the prophet of doom. He's now facing a felony charge for committing a terrorist attack against a mass transportation system. And the images that you're seeing were provided by the New York Police Department as the manhunt was underway to find Frank James. What's kind of incredible about this story is that he was arrested in the East Village, so he wasn't, too far away from the crime that he committed, but he seems to have turned himself in. Apparently a call came into the Crime Stoppers, and apparently he said, I think you're looking for me. I'm seeing my picture all over the news and I'll be around this McDonald's. And then he told authorities that he'd be walking around that general vicinity. And sure enough, he was, as he was walking out in public, others in the area noticed him and also called the authorities. And so he was, of course, later arrested. Now, he did manage to escape the scene of the shooting, and that's what the authorities are trying to figure out as we speak. Like, how did he manage to do it? Did he remain in the subway car with all of the people he victimized, and then he left as soon as the car stopped? They're trying to figure that out. But on the scene after the shooting, authorities found a Glock 9mm handgun. They found 3 ammunition magazines and also a credit card with his name on it, which, real genius there, leaving your credit card. I think at that point, he probably knew that the authorities were on to him. And as we had mentioned yesterday, authorities were looking for a U-Haul truck that they believed he had rented. Why did they believe he had rented it? Well, on the scene, they also found a key to that U-Haul van. Now, there are other details emerging about this suspect that I wanted to get into because it turns out that he has literally dozens, if not hundreds, of YouTube videos where he is saying all sorts of violent things, terrible, disturbing things, racist, anti-Semitic. I mean, I'll get into some of the details in just a minute, but what really fascinated me about the reporting about the videos was just how clearly and transparent, he was very transparent about desires and fantasies of killing people. And when we talk about censorship on social media, I think there's this one kernel of truth coming from the right wingers who lose their minds over people like Alex Jones getting banned permanently. You should have a policy that applies evenly. And since these platforms really rely on these faulty algorithms to make decisions about who should or should not be allowed on their platform, the policies and guidelines are not applied evenly. And again, we're talking about a guy who has committed a terrible act of violence in New York, who for quite some time was posting these videos. And now let me get into the details of what he had said in those videos. Again, Rolling Stone reported that there were hundreds of them. Other outlets reported that there were dozens of them. Who knows the exact number of videos, but there were many, multiple. So in a March 2nd video titled "Told You So," James uses a news segment on recent subway attacks as a segue into an attack on Mayor Eric Adams' policies against crime and homelessness, seemingly implying that his struggles are actually a direct result of the failures of New York City's social services. In the video, he says, "These are the people that was supposed to be helping me. They made me worse," he says, gesturing to a computer screen open to a photo file named "Them Hoes," which appears to display headshots of employees of New Jersey's Bridgeway Behavioral Health Services, an organization James references in numerous videos. He also said that they made me effing worse. They made me more dangerous than anyone could ever effing imagine. These are the people that Eric Adams wants to send out to help the homeless, and whatever the case may be. Yeah, look, I want to be completely clear about my take on this guy and what he says in these videos, okay? I don't think he has any credibility. I don't take anything that he says, at face value. To make himself out to be, the victim is unbelievable and ridiculous. And you'll get what I'm talking about as I give you more details in regard to what he said about various groups of people, particularly Black women. He was particularly vicious toward Black women, and we'll get to that in just a second. So in the same video, he mocks the mayor's subway safety plan rolled out earlier this year, going so far as to suggest that he could actually easily commit a crime in the subway station without being caught. Now, I want to say that he did eventually get caught, but he turned himself in. There is a huge breakdown in our institutions when it comes to this story. I mean, you have surveillance cameras that were not operating, that were not functioning. And that was a little bit of a disaster because those surveillance cameras are supposed to capture any violent crime that takes place so cops are able to catch the suspects. I don't know what would happen had he not turned himself in. I think it's probably likely that they would eventually apprehend him. But again, there is a breakdown in these institutions that are meant to keep us safe. Now he says he can't stop, he's talking about Eric Adams here. He can't stop no effing crime in no subways. He may slow it down, but he ain't stopping anything. James laughs, adding that the large number of entry and exit points from the subway stations would make apprehending criminals nearly impossible. He says, quote, with the program in place with all these police, I'd still get off. I know I could get off because they can't be everywhere. Those who go on to commit crimes like shooting, that means you have to have police in every station, and that's not possible. So he's kind of bragging about having the potential ability of committing a crime, a violent crime, without any repercussions, without getting caught. Now let's move on to his hateful rhetoric toward various disenfranchised groups of people, namely Black people, who he seemed to target quite a bit in his video rants. So he apparently thinks that Black people have allowed themselves to be Europeanized. That's what he says. He occasionally flip-flops between admiration and hatred for other Black Americans, often espousing Black nationalist ideals and calling for the creation of a Black ethno-state before immediately disparaging educated Black and prominent Black women, such as Vice President Kamala Harris and newly confirmed Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. He also compares people of color. I almost don't even want to read this because it's so disgusting. But for our audio audience, I'm gonna read what the report says verbatim. He also compares people of color to a bunch of turds in a toilet waiting to be flushed down the drain by society, and implies that a race war between whites and Blacks is imminent. He also says, if white people tried to exterminate us, I would not be mad for one effing bit. They can't live with each other, but they're going to live with your Black ass, your half monkey cursed by God, Black effing stinking ass, he says in the video. Now, aside from his terrible, hateful rants, he also is very transparent about his fantasies of killing people. One of James's most egregiously racist videos is They Hate Jew, a convoluted semi-autobiographical tirade uploaded to Facebook in late 2017. I mean, these videos have been posted for years. That he finds himself fascinating about killing a Latino man whom he claims prevented him from advancing his machining career, and suggesting that Jewish individuals have so much contempt for Blacks despite undergoing the horrors of the Holocaust. Are you guys getting the pattern here? The pattern of, I'm so great, I'm such a wonderful person, and it's all these other people around me that are keeping me down. In this case, a Latino man who allegedly has stopped him from fulfilling his machining career, mental health professionals who tried to help him, allegedly making him worse. I mean, he's the victim, he's the wonderful person, and he's been screwed over by society. That's like the through line that I've noticed from the descriptions of his video rants. Now, his final hate-filled and rage-filled upload was on April 11th, so very recently, and the clip was titled "Domesticated Averages." And it serves as an eerie precursor for the attack that he went through with earlier this week. He said, quote, "I've been through a lot of crap where I can say I wanted to kill people. I wanted to watch people die right in front of my effing face immediately. But I thought about the fact that, hey man, I don't want to go to effing prison, F that. So I had to absorb the BS, even though it was building up inside me. What could I do? Not much. So aside from wanting to inform you all about who the suspect is, what kind of history he's had, and I'm sure we'll learn more details about him as this story develops, I also wanted to just make it clear that what happened in New York on Monday really is a breakdown in our institutions, okay? And there's so many different societal issues kind of intertwined in this one case. So there is clearly a problem with easily accessible guns. There's a problem with the unwillingness to, in some cases, and I'll give you examples later in the show, of prosecuting violent crime, and I wanna make that specification. But also, why weren't the surveillance cameras working? I mean, one of the ongoing issues in New York is how severely underfunded the public transportation is. It's been falling apart to the point where surveillance cameras aren't working. Listen, I'm not a big fan of surveillance, but it makes sense in these types of public spaces if you're concerned about crime. And to be sure, the subway system in New York has been riddled with violent attacks recently, with stabbings. We shared the story of the guy who smeared his own feces on a woman's face after she rejected his advances. Like, how do you not make sure that these surveillance cameras are working so people who might be victimized by criminals will have their justice served eventually? Now, this guy turned himself in again. Who knows what would have happened had he not turned himself in? It took more than 24 hours for the authorities to arrest him. But again, I mean, this story, it does show like a complete breakdown in how society is supposed to function. And it is a problem when you have working people in New York fear using the trains, which they obviously need to rely on in order to get to and from work, right? So it is a huge problem. I don't wanna minimize the fear that people are feeling. At the same time, let's also keep it real. This story was so shocking and so jarring because of how uniquely violent and terrifying it was. So I don't want anyone to think that these types of shootings are happening on subways in New York on a regular basis, but there have been a number of violent attacks. And so the question is, how do we deal with the uptick in the violent attacks in a way that actually helps to rehabilitate people? That is important, but also ensures that there is a deterrence element as well, so people don't think that they can commit violent crimes and not face any real consequences with it or for it. We'll see how this all plays out. I am worried about, as I've said multiple times on the show, the pendulum swinging back in the direction of mass incarceration. I don't want that, but we are seeing the pendulum swing so far in a direction that I don't think is helpful for the left, that of course wants to make a good case, an important case for criminal justice reform that keeps people safe while also rehabilitating people. Now, so far, we don't know much about his record, whether he has a criminal record. Those details are likely to emerge later, but as always, we will fill you guys in on that as we learn more. In the meantime, though, share what you think. Very curious to hear what your thoughts are. If you're a member, you can always comment as a member. If you're not, send me a super chat. Tell me what you think about this story.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.